All right, shall we dive into our top 10s of 2019?
Sounds awesome.
Jesse, lay it on us.
All right, so I had a little bit of this was a lot of fun for me. Is you go, okay, let me look at, and there were, what do you do with all the Marvel stuff, right?
If you're me,
Yeah.
you cheat and you have a 3-way tie at number 10.
So I'm gonna do and remind me, do you guys do top to bottom, bottom to top? What do you normally
Bottom
do?
to top.
So number 10 to me, Bombshell. I loved that movie. I knew kind of vaguely things about what was going on, but I thought it was really well done. A lot of fun on a very unfun subject, but I enjoyed the movie. I cheated a little bit. Tall Girl from Netflix. I just recently watched that. And for a teen rom-com, it has a lot of charm and a lot of just kind of aware that it's kind of making fun of itself. So that's number 9.
I
8.
have to say, before you get to 8, I'm so happy that you put something like that on your list, because so that movie is like widely derided and panned, and I love when people just embrace the stuff they like despite what. I've never seen Tall Girl because
Yeah.
it has bad reviews.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll check it out now.
Yeah, I mean it, and I am a sucker for Hallmark movies, and so I just thought it was really funny. Deadwood, I was late to the Deadwood thing. It was actually during the pandemic. I said, "Oh, look, I have HBO Max. I'm just gonna do," and I binged Deadwood all in one setting. Over the couple of weeks, and went, God, how did I miss this series? This is amazing. So I was really happy to be that.
Did you find the Deadwood movie to be a satisfying ending to the show?
Yeah, I did.
Did you? I've
Yeah.
always, because I'm obsessed with that show. I loved it to death. Jake, did you see that? Did you watch Deadwood? Okay,
Never
you
did.
should. Incredible show.
Yeah.
Which had an unsatisfying series finale because they didn't know that it was going to be the series finale. And then the
Yeah.
movie, I mean, granted, you've got a pedophile in the movie because Jeffrey Jones, who was found to be a pedophile, is
Yeah.
then cast. I think he has like no speaking roles though. And then some of the cast had died, so there were limitations.
Yeah, and I was just happy to spend more time in that town, that world. And I think it helped that I knew kind of after the circumstances. This felt like this was in a concert. You've already had them do the encore, and you thinking you're not. I will tie it back to Bruce. I was in Louisville, Kentucky. They had done Twist and Shout. He had done Thunder Road. The show was over. The band had left the stage. Max gave his drumsticks to someone in the stage, and Bruce picked up his guitar, and you could see everyone like, what? And they did Bobby Jean. So it was like this, oh, we got a bonus. So that's how I felt that. Another rom-com, Always Be My Maybe, I think was always a little bit of fun. My son adores WWE wrestling.
You are speaking to, I mean, we are
We're huge fans.
lifelong WWE fans. So
Yeah.
So I watched Fighting with My Family, and then I made my son, like, you've got to watch it. I don't want to watch. No, we've got to watch this movie. And so we got to watch it together. I was fascinated by the lead, and turns out she's got a few chops, doesn't she? Sad moment, right? I'm watching Oppenheimer, and I'm going, who is his girlfriend? God, she is charismatic. And then afterwards, oh, she's the new Black Widow. Of course. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was kind of a breakout for her, though.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then my 3, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Far From Home, Avengers Endgame. You could swap any of those around. Probably Avengers Endgame, I think, goes the highest because you were kind of dropping it up. Then A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I loved the article, and then I liked Tom Hanks' performance. Just the idea of looking for helpers. And then a movie that I had no idea what was happening. I watched Booksmart, and I went, oh my God, the idea of a crude buddy comedy with female leads was just hilarious. So that was number 1 for me because it surprised the hell out of me, right? I just did not expect them. So that's my 10.
So I love that. Of your 10, I only have 2 of those, even in my top 20. Really interesting stuff. I'm going to real quick go through some honorable mentions, like fast. The 2 Popes I've talked about on this show before, by the guy who made City of God. Incredible movie, great cast, about a real story, the transition of our last two popes. I say our, I'm not Catholic. I think Bad Education, the HBO movie starring Hugh Jackman, is very, very good. The Art of Self-Defense, starring Jesse Eisenberg, directed by Riley Stearns, is so weird, but a great indie movie. One of the better strange Jesse Eisenberg movies. Dolomite Is My Name, which got completely ignored because it came out on Netflix, but just hilarious. A great comeback for Eddie Murphy, who's like always coming back, but he's like great in every one of his comebacks. And then an amazing performance by Wesley Snipes, who we've talked about as being like a much more important figure in Hollywood history than he's given credit for. And he's so good in Dolomite Is My Name. And then just talking about wrestling, The Peanut Butter Falcon is a great movie that features Jake the Snake Roberts and Mick Foley and also Shia LaBeouf in just a really touching story that my father-in-law hates for some reason. But I think this movie's amazing.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, I'm going to cheat. I'm doing a three-way tie for number 10. 2019 is a great movie year. Doing a three-way tie. Two animated films. One is Away by Gintz Zilbalotis. He has a new movie out in theaters right now called Flow. This was his first feature film, Away. He made it all by himself. There's no one else in the credits. It's just him. He made an animated feature film by himself about a kid who crash lands on an island and has to run away from a golem, basically. That's the whole movie. It's just him trying to find different ways to get away. And he's also taking care of a bird that got hurt. Incredible. Tukes and Fanny, I've talked about on this show before. This is another animated movie made by one guy, by Albert Birney, who is the nephew of a different Birney, who's actually a relatively famous actor. This movie is made in 8-bit. It looks like a Nintendo game, and it's in Russian, despite being an American movie, and it's very episodic. It was released initially on Instagram, I want to say. Jake, I know you don't like this very much, but I just think Tukes and Fanny is so interesting about a little pink blob and a little purple blob and their thoughts about the universe. And then last, tied for number 10, is Avengers Endgame. Unfortunately, I feel is like the last gasp of greatness from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There have been MCU movies I've liked since then. Doctor Strange 2 comes to mind as one that I think it's slammed unfairly. We've talked about that in our Sam Raimi podcast, but I think Endgame is great and was one of the more satisfying theater experiences I've had. It really sucks that Robert Downey Jr. is back. I'm really mad about it. He was such a great I'm curious what they do, but I'm really mad about it. My number 9 is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I watched this with my wife when I had COVID. I got COVID right when COVID hit. I was like an early adopter. And I was sick for 2 months. And so we watched this over Zoom. I was living in New York. She was living in New Jersey. She wasn't my wife yet. Looking at each other on FaceTime, looking at the movie. Very touching Celine Sciamma movie, Forbidden Love. My number 8, Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Didn't like this one so much when I saw it in the theater. Watched it back again a couple summers ago and realized that it is the kind of movie you need to see twice to really appreciate.
I watched it only once and found it boring. And now then that's a good reminder that I should pull that up again and try it with a new mindset, right?
Absolutely. Just like knowing it's a cool movie to watch again, knowing what you know about it, because you start to see that he really does put all the pieces in place for that finale throughout the film. It's very satisfying.
Okay.
My number 7 is The Farewell, a movie I feel like is a little forgotten. It was a Lulu Wang movie starring Awkwafina in far and away her best performance ever. Her grandmother has lung cancer. The family decides not to tell her that they have lung cancer, and they stage a wedding. Almost fake wedding. It's a real wedding, but it's sort of forced upon the cousin who has to have it as a farewell to her so that she doesn't know that it's a way for everyone to say goodbye to her. It turns out the true story is she never knew she had lung cancer. And because of that, she never succumbed to despair. And she lived she may even still be alive, but for many, many years after she was diagnosed, she lived. My number 6 is 1917. We talked a lot today about Dean Charles Chapman. He's one of the 2 stars of 1917, along with George McKay. This is one of those, Jake, you talked about this in a recent episode, one of these oneer movies. This one's by Sam Mendes. It's part of the 60% of movies he makes that are good and not the 40% that he makes that are bad. And I think his good movies are very good. And I think this is one of them, about 2 British soldiers who have to get a message across enemy lines to a British officer. It's really stirring. It was another one of the 2019. It really sucks about the pandemic because there were so many great theater movies in 2019, and this was one of them. My number 5 is Midsommar, my favorite Ari Aster movie. I think my favorite horror movie about a bunch of college kids who go to Sweden, and it's also they go there for one of their to research their master's thesis. There's all kinds of relationship dynamics between them, most of which Florence Pugh, who we mentioned as the star of Fighting with My Family, she's also the star of this film. Her parents and sister have just died in a brutal murder suicide. It's about her bad relationship with her boyfriend, played by Jack Rayner. This movie is so scary. It's so visually stunning and really tense and uncomfortable in a satisfying way, I think. My number 4 is my favorite John Wick movie, I guess my favorite John Wick movie, Parabellum, Chapter 3. I don't have too much to say. If you like John Wick, you like John Wick. If you don't, you don't. This is like pure, straight to the vein John Wick, and it's not 3 hours long. I love John Wick 4, but it's a lot to take. It's a lot of movie. My number 3 is Rian Johnson's Knives Out. As a huge Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie head, this is exactly the kind of movie that I want. A real bombastic version of a murder mystery, everyone's stuck in a house. And Daniel Craig created an incredible character in Benoit Blanc. My number 2 is Parasite, Bong Joon-ho's last great movie. We're still waiting, as of this recording, we're still waiting for Mickey 17 to come out. It's great. You know what Parasite is. You don't need me to recommend Parasite. It won Best Picture. It's the only international film to do that since ever? When? How long? Ever?
I think ever. Yeah, it's the first one ever. Yep.
Deserved. Great movie. Yep. And my number 1 is a movie we talked about quite a bit recently because we just reviewed To Be or Not to Be, but it's a movie heavily influenced by To Be or Not to Be. Taika Waititi's last good movie, Jojo Rabbit. Love this movie to death. This was my introduction to Thomasin McKenzie, who has continued to have a great career. Scarlett Johansson, accent aside. As we know from my love for Gangs of New York, I'm okay with someone having a bad accent. She does a great job here. Taika's very funny as Hitler. Sam Rockwell is incredible as the German officer who is sympathetic to Germans being abused by their own government. Alfie Allen's really funny in a small role, but the real show stealers are Stephen Merchant as the head of the Gestapo and Archie Yates as Jojo Rabbit, who's played by Roman Griffin Davis, his little fat friend who is so unbelievably charismatic and funny, and every line that comes out of his mouth is perfect.
All right, great. Well, I do want to mention, like I said, I do separate lists for features and documentaries, and in my documentary list, like I said, there's a lot of great documentaries that year. Love Antosha came in at number 9, right behind the Rolling Thunder Review, Bob Dylan documentary by Martin Scorsese, and right in front of a documentary called Maiden, which was about a female sailing, like an Olympic female sailing team that won a gold medal, or I don't know, something. They did something really great. It was a good documentary. It's been 5 years since I've seen it. But Love Antosha ranked pretty highly on my documentary list. Features-wise, amazing year for movies. I'm going to just run through my honorable mentions real quick. A lot of them have been mentioned already. The Todd Haynes movie Dark Waters came out that year, very good. I have John Wick 3 Parabellum on my honorable mention as well. James Mangold's Ford vs. Ferrari came out that year. Dolomite Is My Name. I've got Spider-Man Far From Home, Knives Out, Scorsese's The Irishman, Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, Jojo Rabbit is my honorable mention. Greta Gerwig's Little Women make up my honorable mentions. So, I mean, any of those movies could be in a top 10, and I would not, look twice at that. I think those are all great. My number 10 is Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory, featuring Antonio Banderas' best performance. He's an aging actor, trying to get back to acting, but he's having a hard time with that, and it's also got some flashbacks to his previous life. Just a really, really terrific performance, and not often you see Antonio Banderas do an entire role in Spanish these days. My number 9 was mentioned by Brad and talked about quite a bit. Is The Farewell. Yes, love this movie very much. Number 8, certainly not mentioned by Brad because I know he does not like this movie, but the Safdie brothers, Uncut Gems, featuring a great performance by Adam Sandler, a jewel dealer who just can't ever let anything go and always has to be going after the one next deal that's going to be the one. My number 7 is...
If I just need to defend myself real quick. If Uncut Gems, if I hadn't seen it when it came out, and I saw it now, and I didn't know anything about it, I'd think it was a cool movie. It was hyped up so much. Everyone's like, this is the greatest movie. Adam Sandler is the greatest actor of all time, and I think he's very good in it. I think everyone's very good in it. It's a well-constructed movie. But people were calling it we're mad it wasn't Best Picture. Give me a break.
Yeah, it was a little bit overblown, certainly, but also, you've got NBA star Kevin Garnett, who's really good in this movie.
Is good in it, yeah.
I just think it's a really, really cool movie. My number 7, we've talked about already, is Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Amazing performance by DiCaprio. It's got the him pointing meme, which we do all the time.
But in the movie Koch, Walter Matthau does the same thing, and that is my version of the pointing meme.
Well, you can have it. The rest of us have DiCaprio. My number 6, Jesse, I was surprised you didn't have this on your list, but my number 6 is Blinded by the Light.
I assumed that since we're talking about it, I left the spot for another one, you know?
I think it's smart to do that just to have more movies to talk about. I
Yeah.
also just want to shout out Love Antosha is 14 on my top 20 list.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 5 is a tough watch, especially it came out not long after I went through a divorce, but it's Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story, starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson as a divorced couple trying to navigate raising their son together. Terrific performances, great score by Randy Newman. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, but I thought it was incredibly well done. Laura Dern won her Oscar for this. She's great in it. Number 4, all of the rest of these movies have already been mentioned now. My number 4 is Sam Mendes' 1917. Really compelling movie, just well shot, well acted. Really, you don't see a lot of World War I movies either. We seem to be inundated with a lot of World War II movies all the time. But like World War I, there's All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917 and this. And there's I can't think of any others off the top of my head, honestly. So
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of...
There's Life and Death of Colonel Blimp.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Yep, which we covered. And it's a great movie. My number 3 is Avengers Endgame, which is, like I said, we've talked about before. Super satisfying ending, a great culmination of years and almost 24 movies. Love everything about Endgame. My number 2 is a movie, Brad, that you mentioned, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Just an amazing love story, beautifully shot, amazing performances. Yeah, just outstanding movie. And then my number 1, and I think my wife will be okay with me mentioning this, because it came out, when did we see it? It was like October, November of 2019 when we saw it. We'd only been together for about 6 months or so at that point. And we went down, we had to drive an hour and a half out of our way to see it. We had to drive down to Traverse City to see it. And when she saw it, she watched movies before we got together, but not like obsessively or the way I did. And when we went and saw Parasite, when it was over, she was like, I need to see better movies. Like it was like kind of like a turning point for her where she was like, I think I'm missing out on something, on some things, and this Parasite was kind of like a big watershed moment for her. So it holds a special place in our relationship, as well as I just think it's a banger of a movie.
She had to go back and rearrange all of her old star ratings.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, Jesse, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, first off, I want to say that this was a blast, and I kind of feel like I'm the kid that's reading in the junior high level, and you guys are in a graduate class with movies. Hey, I feel like I've been able to audit a college course and having a blast.
I just want to reiterate again, though, that it feels really good to have someone come on and talk about movies that we're not going to talk about. Like The Tall Girl, that was such a good pull. We, in a trillion years, that movie was never going to come up in the history of Never Did It. I am so glad that it has. Fighting with My Family is a movie that Jake and I both saw when it came out because we're huge wrestling fans and talked about at length when it came out. And it wouldn't have come up unless you had brought it up.